I am pleased to give you an update on where we are at in our remodel project. So, last week I told you we originally were looking at completing our remodel project probably in the first week of March, but due to things moving very quickly, we were actually maybe going to see the completion of the project in the first week of February. February 8th, roughly? Yeah, barring any hiccups. There's been a hiccup. So we're trying to work through it. Long story short, our timeline right now, we're still shooting for February 8th being when the project is complete. There is a possibility it will be on the 15th instead. So we are hoping that we're going to be able to return to the sanctuary on February 15th, but if that's not the case, it's going to be February 22nd. So we're moving as fast as we can. I do want to give a special thanks to the many people who showed up here on a Thursday night, because we learned, hey, if we can move all the furniture from our offices in the back wing out of the sanctuary and back to our offices, we might get back on track. So I had like 10 people here on Thursday night, and we were running around for hours putting everything back. So could you all just give a round of applause for those folks? They know who they are. Really appreciate them and all their hard work, and to everybody who's been making this happen, to everybody who gave, just thank you once again. We're really excited to see the project coming to a conclusion and to start monkeying with sound and audio-visual stuff in the sanctuary, because that will probably be a work in progress, but we're going to make it happen. Amen? I want to let you know, February 13th, we are having a blood drive here at the church. The Bloodmobile is going to be coming to our parking lot. It seemed like a really fitting time to have a blood drive because it's right near Valentine's Day, so we're calling it the Share the Love Blood Drive. I just want to encourage everybody who can give blood, give us your blood, please, because there are people who need it in our community. If you want to sign up for that, they do take walk-ins, but they would prefer that we sign up so they can lay out a schedule for who's coming into the blood wagon when, because they can only host a couple people at a time. There is a QR code in the bulletin on the little ad for the Share the Love Blood Drive event. So if you scan that, it'll take you online where you need to sign up. I just want to encourage everybody, again, if you can give blood, please do. One of the things that's kind of cool when you sign up with Bloodworks Northwest, who we're working with, they will track where your blood goes and let you know when it gets donated and how it helps people out. So you get to kind of feel like you're making a difference, which is pretty neat. So at this time, I'd like to dismiss our kiddos. They're going to go down with Miss Cindy today to learn about how Jesus cares for everyone. And you're going to learn the story about Jesus healing some people suffering from leprosy. So that's going to be really great. Well, may the peace of Christ be with you. When was the last time you took on something really intimidating? And I'm not talking about the mountain of laundry that you built up over the course of the week. I'm talking about something that left your knees knocking together. Something that left you truly scared. Maybe it was when you started a new job, or you got married, or you had your first child. Maybe you launched your own business, or you took on a new project, or you moved to a foreign country. Maybe you got sick, you lost a loved one, or endured a divorce, and you had to figure out how you were going to do life under a new normal. When some people enter a new chapter of life, they get really excited because they see it as an adventure. They really like not knowing what's going to happen next. I'm seeing the faces. I feel this way too. For some reason, these people enjoy discomfort. They like being out of their element. They love going to a new place and just getting lost. I would love to be one of those people, but I am not one of those people. I hate being lost, so I use my GPS frequently and without shame. I like consistency. I like the familiar because the familiar is reliable. The unknown presents a lot of pitfalls and potential liabilities. So whenever I take on something new and big, I get really anxious. I find myself hyperfixating and worrying about every little thing that could go wrong. I still remember the feeling of taking the stage at the Brandt Center in Nampa, Idaho, to preach my first sermon to adults. I thought I was about to die. It terrified the living daylights out of me. When I graduated college and I moved to Kansas City and realized I had moved into an economically disadvantaged area where drive-bys were a very common occurrence, I was pretty scared. When I accepted my first youth ministry assignment in Illinois, when I became the lead pastor of this church, I felt the weight of those moments. And that weight made me ask myself, can I do this? Can I rise to the occasion? At the very least, can I survive this? And I would venture to guess that many of you have felt the same way at various times in your life. So, how do we become a people that look forward to uncertain days? How do we maintain an optimism that survives the assault of the unknown? I think there's a very powerful lesson about that, which we are going to be looking at today in Numbers chapter 13. We're going to be reading from Numbers 13, verses 26 through 33, if you want to flip in your Bibles or scroll into your Bibles to join me there. And here's a little bit of background on the book of Numbers. So the book of Numbers is the fourth book of the Old Testament. It describes the period of biblical history where Israel entered the wilderness under the leadership of Moses. If you're a timeline person, I'm a timeline person. This would be a biblical timeline that kind of shows you where it falls. This happened sometime in the 1200s, 1300s BC, somewhere in there. Moses, of course, was a prophet chosen by God to liberate his people from Egyptian slavery. And to complete his mission, Moses and his brother Aaron infamously appeared before Pharaoh and presented God's demand. What did God demand of Pharaoh? What did God demand of Pharaoh? Let my people go. And when Pharaoh refused, he was met with the 10 plagues of Egypt. Pharaoh eventually relented, and Israel escaped into the wilderness. At Mount Sinai, God entered into a covenant with his people and gave them the law. The terms of the covenant were very simple. If Israel obeyed the law, they would be blessed. If Israel disobeyed the law, they would be cursed. With this covenant made, God promised to lead his people into a rich and prosperous land where they could build themselves up as a free and blessed nation. The land was called the Promised Land, or Canaan, and it was located on the other side of the desert. So that's Israel's blueprint. That's what Numbers is talking about. Leave Egypt, go into the wilderness, receive the covenant, invade Canaan, prosper. All Israel had to do, all they had to do was keep the law. And so Israel agreed to the terms of this covenant and then immediately disobeyed all of it by worshiping a golden calf and engaging in a wild, depraved, drunken orgy. At this point, God became so angry that he considered wiping Israel off the map and starting over with Moses. But Moses pleaded with the Lord, and Israel was spared. As we pick up the story today, Moses might be regretting his decision a little bit. Because by interceding on Israel's behalf, it reveals that God, what he said about Israel was actually pretty true. God was right, go figure. These people are stubborn. They're really whiny. They're rebellious. It's like a nation of junior hires. They are a thorn in Moses' side for the rest of his life. The time comes to check out the Promised Land. So Moses selects 12 spies, 12 representatives, one from each of the tribes of Israel, and he sends them on a reconnaissance mission. Their job is to explore the Promised Land by going up out of the Negev desert and into the hill country of Canaan. As they explored, they were instructed to evaluate the land, to evaluate the villages of the wicked people living there, to estimate the power of their militias, and to evaluate the quality of the soil. If possible, the spies should also bring back samples of Canaanite produce. After 40 days, the spies complete their mission, and they return to Moses to report. They come back with pomegranates and figs and a cluster of grapes so big that it had to be carried on a pole between two of the spies. The land is spectacular. But according to the spies, the fruit isn't the only thing that's huge in Canaan, and that's a problem. Numbers 13, 26 through 33 narrates their report to Moses. So that's what we're going to be reading this morning. If you want to join me, beginning in verse 26. They, the spies, came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here's the fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev, the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, "We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We can't attack those people. They're stronger than we are." And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land they had explored. They said, "The land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there were of great size. We saw the Nephilim there." The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them." Is the word of the Lord. So, the spies come back from their mission, and there's at least one thing that they can all agree on. The land is very fruitful. They describe it as a land flowing with milk and honey, and this poetic language reflects the success of agriculture in the region. Ancient Canaanites raised cattle, sheep, and goats, all of which obviously produced milk. And it might surprise you to learn that the ancient Canaanites actually raised bees also. According to archaeologists uncovering the ruins of an ancient Near Eastern apiary, a single bee farm could contain over 100 hives and produce between 600 and 1,000 pounds of honey annually in ancient Canaan. The spies also discovered fruitful orchards, evidenced by their collection of pomegranates and dates. The vineyards they explored were so productive that a single bunch of grapes had to be carried by 2 men. The spies bring these fruits forward, they lay them before the people, and as we read verses 26 and 27, we imagine that the Israelites would be overjoyed. The land is just as abundant as God promised. These folks have been living in the desert. There are no pomegranates in the desert. On the horizon, great days are coming. There's a bright future. This is all wonderful news. Thanks be to God. But then in verse 28, the report takes a really sharp turn. It says, "But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev, the Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country. The Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan." Okay, so if you read your scripture, then you know who the Amalekites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, and the Canaanites were. They're people groups that are mentioned elsewhere in the Old Testament, and we can track their lineage. That's no problem. But who are the descendants of Anak? According to the report of the spies from verse 33, the descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. And everyone goes, ooh. This is the part where you go, ooh. It looks silly if only I do it. The Nephilim. Yeah, it feels like a campfire story now. The mysterious Nephilim, yeah, I like it, are only mentioned briefly here and at the beginning of the story of Noah and the flood. If you go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, it says that the Nephilim are the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. It says that they were the heroes of old, men of renown. According to Jewish legend, the Nephilim were giants. They were huge. And that's what the spies want Moses and all of Israel to imagine when they think of the Canaanites. They're of great size. They are the legendary Nephilim. They are giants. We are like grasshoppers in their eyes. And not only is the enemy huge, they're everywhere. They're in the desert, the hill country, and the coastland. They're hiding behind every bush and tree. We have no chance of fighting them. Now, the spies certainly didn't expect to walk into a ghost town and set up shop, because the Lord had already warned them that wicked people lived in the promised land. God was sending Israel for the express purpose of driving these wicked people out as punishment for the heinous sins they committed. What kind of evil things were these people doing? Well, according to Scripture, the Canaanites performed human sacrifice, bestiality, oppression of the poor, blood magic, and violence, just to name a few. They were a savage, brutal, and unethical people. And something about these savage Canaanites left the Jewish spies terrified. I don't know that they saw actual giants. Maybe the Canaanites were tall for an ancient people group, but when Israel finally enters the promised land under the leadership of Joshua, the scriptures don't describe the Canaanites as an army of giants. Giants do not appear in the archaeological record of ancient Canaan either. They're just normal guys. They're people. So then why did the spies report that they were seeing giants? Well, let's think hypothetically. If you're afraid of going to war and you can appeal to a well-known legend, if you can conjure the boogeyman into the minds of your countrymen, then fear will do a lot of the talking for you, won't it? It's very possible the spies were exaggerating the monstrous stature of the Canaanites to discourage an invasion. Clearly, their report contains at least some exaggeration. I mean, how does the land of Canaan devour those who are living in it, like the spies claim, when the Canaanites seem to be doing pretty well? It doesn't match up. It should cause us to ask, is the report from the spies completely reliable, or is there some anti-war propaganda in there coming from some scared men? Israel probably should have considered that before jumping on the bandwagon. Whether it was their height or something else, these spies saw something in Canaan that scared them. The Canaanites were impressive. Their cities and villages were established. They had some fortifications and troops, and were probably more numerous than the spies expected. With the invasion of Canaan, God had placed a difficult task in front of Israel. And just like we do, when we face a difficult task, a challenge, the spies panicked. Now, most of the time, the challenges we face only feel like a matter of life and death. But for the Israelites, the invasion of Canaan was a literal matter of life and death. They took it seriously. They grew worried. They asked, can we do this? Can we rise to the occasion? Can we even survive this? And 10 of the spies concluded that God's command would lead to disaster. As a result, they tried to dissuade and dishearten the people. They spread a bad report. They wanted to return to the familiar, the safe, the predictable, even if that meant returning to slavery in Egypt. But not all the spies take this position. Here comes Caleb. In ancient Hebrew, the name Caleb is etymologically connected to the term dog. When you see Caleb coming, that's my dog. Literally. Just kind of fun. Dogs are loyal. Dogs are determined. They're bold. They're brave. And so was Caleb. Caleb can also mean wholehearted, a namesake which is well earned in his case. Caleb stands up as a minority voice among the 12. We learn in Numbers chapter 14 that one other spy stood with Caleb, and that man was Joshua. But Joshua doesn't give a speech here, and it might make you wonder why. Probably because Joshua was Moses' aide. He was his right-hand man, and the people all assume he's biased. Of course he's going to support going into the Canaanite territory. He's Moses' guy. But Caleb has no such baggage. His testimony would receive less undue suspicion. So the crowd is getting rowdy. And in verse 30, we learn that Caleb silenced the people. He hushed them. He calmed them down long enough to say his piece. We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Caleb spent 40 days spying out the promised land with the others. He has seen the same people, the same fortifications, the same big scary task which lay before Israel, but somehow he arrived at a very different conclusion. I read a quote this week from German statesman Konrad Adenauer, and it goes like this. We all live under the same sky, but do not all have the same horizon. I felt like that was really powerful. Adenauer's proverb is really apropos this morning. And it makes me wonder, why was Caleb's horizon different from that of the other spies? What caused the shift? There had to be a variable in there somewhere. So I thought about it this week, and I think I figured it out. In their speeches, Caleb and the rest of the spies used the same word, but they seemed to define it differently. And that word is we. If you go to verse 31, the spies say, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. Who is the we that the spies are referring to? They are referring to Israel, the people, the army, the fighting men, the manpower. And their statement might be completely true. It's very possible that the military might of Canaan was superior to the military might of Israel. But when Caleb says, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it, who is the we that Caleb is referring to? Because I'm convinced he's using the pronoun differently. When Caleb says we, he means Israel and God. That's an important distinction. Why can Israel defeat Canaan? Matthew 19:26, Jesus says, with man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Now, in context, Jesus wasn't talking about war. Jesus was talking about how a person can be saved from sin and death, but the moral still holds true. Caleb included God in his equation of what was possible, and that changed everything. God is mightier than the Canaanites. God said that he wanted his people to enter the land and take it, and that's all Caleb needed. Equation solved. Conversation over. It's time to move out. It doesn't matter how thick the walls of the fortified cities are. It doesn't matter how far the spear of the enemy reaches or how tall the soldier holding it stands. If our God is for us, then no one could ever stop us. And if our God is with us, then what can stand against? Nothing. With man, many things are impossible, but with God, nothing is impossible. And Caleb understood that about God. Unfortunately, if you know the story, Caleb gets shouted down by the other spies and the crowd. Even as the faithful plead with Israel to obey the Lord, the people consider stoning Moses and Aaron to death, electing new leadership and returning as willing slaves to Egypt. That's how the story ends. It's only when the Lord shows up and reveals his glory that they stop scheming to assassinate their own leadership. And God considers wiping them out again, but Moses intercedes for them again. And so God decides, okay, we're going to change the punishment then. But there still needs to be a punishment here. Only 2 out of this entire generation of Israel is going to enter the promised land. The rest of this generation is going to wander and die in the desert. And so it's kind of ironic. In the end, everyone got what they wanted. Those who wanted to stay in the desert, stayed in the desert. And those who wanted to enter the promised land, entered the promised land. The thing that kills me about this story is that Israel should have known better. That's the thing that kills me. You know, it's one thing to hear a story about God doing something miraculous. We love it when a missionary comes here and we hear a story of something truly spectacular happening over in Timbuktu. That's one thing. And that's encouraging and that's uplifting. But it's another thing to witness the miracle for yourself. That should instill radical faith in you. Doesn't it feel strange that this entire generation, these stubborn, foolish Israelites, doesn't it seem strange to you that they saw the 10 plagues of Egypt with their own eyes? That they watched as the Red Sea was parted under Moses' staff and washed away Pharaoh's army, that they observed the very glory of God settling on Mount Sinai. Doesn't it seem strange that they witnessed all of this, but for some reason doubted that God could help to deliver them from the Canaanites? For me, it's more than strange. It's foolish. It's dumb. There is no rationality there for me. I just said that the spies wanted to go back to the familiar, that they wanted to avoid the unknown. And there is an incredible irony in that statement. Because do you know what the familiar was to them? Do you know what they saw happen time and time and time again? God bailing them out. Massive outpourings of divine power, miracles we would kill to see. They watched all this happen. They saw it so many times. They could count on God to rescue them in the future because God kept rescuing them in the past. They had a reliable pattern to work with. They had already seen what was possible, so nothing should seem impossible. What is wrong with these people? As I read the story, I struggle with that. And I want to be a more empathetic person, I guess. So this week, while I was prepping for this sermon, I wanted to put myself into their sandals to see if I could understand, to see if it could make sense for me. I was thinking about what it would be like to stare down an enemy that I knew for certain could destroy me. Someone far more powerful. Someone intimidating. I imagined someone that I knew could rip me limb from limb. And so, I thought of my brother-in-law. This is Kyle Young. He is married to my sister Kristen, and they live in Texas. Now, I'm going to use my brother-in-law for an example here, but I want to be clear about something. I adore my brother-in-law. He is not my enemy. He is my friend. He is my kin. I am blessed to have him in my life. I can testify that he is one of the kindest, most thoughtful, generous, talented, hardworking, hilarious, inspiring, and amazing people I have ever met. My sister did so well in choosing him. And my brother-in-law did so well in choosing my sister. When I see their marriage, I see what I would want in a potential marriage in my life. They are relationship goals, as people would say. They are rad. Now, I bring up my brother-in-law because he is also one of the most physically strong human beings I have ever met. He works in the fitness industry, and what he does is he trains powerlifters and strength competitors. He personally, when I say this, this is not hyperbole. My brother-in-law personally knows the strongest men currently walking planet Earth on a personal basis. He knows the Nephilim because he trains the Nephilim. Over the New Year holiday, I watched this man pick up 600 pounds in his garage. Why? Because he could. Not only is my brother-in-law a power lifter, he is also a mixed martial artist. He is one bad dude. If God told me, Ryan, go and fight your brother-in-law, I would be quaking in my sneakers. I've seen how strong he is. This man's muscles are so massive, he can't hardly turn his neck or touch his elbows together. If he wanted to, Kyle could deadlift my body so hard and so fast he would throw me into the stratosphere. This man could rip me in half like a piece of junk mail. Kyle is so strong that if he punched me once, he would erase me from the timeline of history. The only way I would go to war with my brother-in-law is from about 200 yards away with my rifle. At least, that's what I would have said before last year. This is my big sister, Kristen. She is amazing. Her nickname is Shorty. In that sense, my sister is my big sister chronologically and my little sister physically. I mention her diminutive stature because it's germane to the story. And I need to emphasize that Kristen and Kyle love each other very much. They're adorable. It's sickening. So last year, my powerlifter, mixed martial artist, juggernaut of a brother-in-law was teaching my sister some boxing. And he explained what would happen if she punched someone in the solar plexus. For those unaware, the solar plexus is a collection of two bundles of nerves beneath the diaphragm near the stomach. As Kyle explained, a punch to the solar plexus temporarily paralyzes the diaphragm and leaves the recipient with the feeling of getting the wind knocked out of them. They can't breathe. Do you see where I'm going with this? Kyle, being the absolute Adonis that he is, tells my sister she couldn't hit him in the solar plexus if she tried. So she tried. Bam! Kyle drops on the floor, absolutely devastated. First swing of the glove, Kristen nails Kyle dead center, and he starts sucking wind like he was Superman and had just been shot in the gut with a kryptonite bullet. And my big little sister laid the beast out. And as she did, she cackled like the Wicked Witch of the West. Because, to her credit, it was pretty funny. Now, when Kyle finally recovered, he rose to his feet, wanting to prove his mettle. So he tells my sister he wants to go best 2 out of 3. Yeah. Because there's no way she could do that again. And my sister believes in the scientific method. To arrive at an accurate conclusion, one must repeat the experiment again. Wham! Drills him, he goes down again. Now, I would love to tell you that Kyle learned his lesson. But come to find out, Kristen laid him out 4 times in succession. Commenting on these experiences, Kyle said that getting hit the second time does indeed hurt way more than the first. But he clarified that while this is true physically, he must stress that the emotional and spiritual impact to one's pride is far greater. See, now that I know Shorty managed to lay out the beast 4 times, I feel like, given the right set of circumstances, I could have a shot. If God called me to fight my brother-in-law, and if I knew this history, and if I knew this was God's will, and if I knew that God was on my side, I would put up my dukes and run to the center of the ring. And if I was wrong about all that, then at least my sister would avenge me. Here, and in Caleb, we discover the secret to looking forward to new, intimidating seasons of life with optimism. To stare down the giant that you're facing. This is the secret. It's what Israel missed out on and what you can catch right here. When God calls you to something big and you get scared, look to the past. The secret of stepping into the unknown with confidence is by remembering what God has already done for you in the past. If God was faithful yesterday, if he rescued you then, if he led you then, if he helped you then you can rely on God to help you tomorrow. If God beat the Egyptians, then why can't he beat the Canaanites? If God helped you before, why can't he help you again? All you got to do is stay within his will and leave the rest to him. If our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? What big, scary opportunity might you be facing in life right now? What's making you ask the question, can I do this? Can I rise to the occasion? Can I even survive this? Man, it might be impossible. But with God, all things are possible. If you are about to tackle something big, if you are entering unfamiliar territory, if you're feeling anxious about what tomorrow may bring, can I make a simple suggestion? Stop worrying about tomorrow, start thinking about yesterday. Remembering how God brought you through is going to be a memory of God's faithfulness that will instill in you a powerful confidence that you can tackle even the greatest giants of tomorrow. Would you bow your heads? We're going to pray real quick. And all I'm going to pray for you today is that God would remind you of what he's done in your past. Whatever you might be facing, whatever might be coming up, whatever big project, opportunity, loss, whatever hits you, you can handle it if you remember that God has been with you thus far. If he's brought you to the edge of the promised land, he's ready to lead you into it. Lord our God, this morning, I am just asking that you provide us with a powerful memory from the past. Lord, I pray that you would call to our minds right now a moment when you reached into our lives and you delivered us. I think about a time when I was at my lowest, and I fell on my knees in prayer to you, and I said, dear, sweet, merciful God, just send me home. And 2 weeks later, I got a text message. Hey, Ryan, we're looking for a youth pastor in Hillsboro. Would you consider coming? Completely out of nowhere, completely unexpected. I remember a time when you delivered me, and you helped me. And it was big, and it was new, and it was scary. But when I thought back to the other times you delivered me, protecting me in Kansas City, getting me through that first sermon, helping me deal with grief and loss, I think about these past moments, Lord, and how they give me confidence for tomorrow, and how I know I can rely on you because you've been faithful. Lord, I just pray you would conjure those memories for my friends here this morning. That they would have something they can latch onto, that as they face the scary giant of tomorrow, they would remember the scary giants that have fallen in the past. And because of that, feel confident. Lord, would you give us that memory this morning? Would you remind us of your goodness, of your faithfulness, of your power, of your wisdom, of moments when your will came through instead of ours, and that actually turned out to be better? Lord, would you make us strong and noble and tenacious and wholehearted like Caleb? Let us not be like the 10 who cowered. But Lord, let us be willing to stand even in the midst of a majority of contrary voices, to stand up and say, I'm going to trust my God for what he wants me to do. Lord, grant us that memory today. Grant us that confidence today. And Lord, let us never forget. Let us never forget when you deliver to give you thanks. We give you thanks today, Lord, for the many victories you've brought about in our lives. And we promise to give you thanks in the victories to come. Come what may, whatever they are. Lord, may your will be done and not ours. Pray these things in your holy name.